Good evening, and this will be the Committee of the Whole for Smith Falls Council on Monday, December the 14th. Welcome to all of this. Is going to be a busy evening. I'm Councillor Wendy Alford, and I'll be chairing this part of the evening's events. The agenda is only has 3 items tonight, but don't be deceived. This is going to take a while. Welcome to our 2 student councillors, Lagarde and Hughes, and I think I see everyone except with the exception of Councillor Dwyer, who will join us as soon as she can. And CAO Morris, if you could call the roll for staff attending tonight.
Yes, certainly, Madam Chair. So tonight we have a large number of staff with us. We have, of course, Deputy Clerk Nadine Bennett. We have Chief Cheeseborough, Fire Chief Rick Cheeseborough. We have Jennifer Miller with us, Art Manhire, Carrie Costello, Janet Kazil, Jason Barlow, Troy Dunlop, Carl Grenke, and Police Chief Mark McGilvery is here as well.
Thank you. Well, when we're discussing the budget, it's good to have all hands on deck. Welcome to Councillor Dwyer is here. So with that being said, are there any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none from council, I'm going to suggest as chair that given that we have some guests attending to help us understand the housing and the rapid housing initiative, I'm going to suggest to council that we make the budget report C on our list of priority issues tonight, if that is okay. Then that being said, that will be the only amendment to the agenda. Any disclosure of monetary interest? Seeing none, there are no delegations this evening. There are no adoption of minutes this evening. And CAO, do you have a report?
Yes, we have 2 this evening, Madam Chair. The first one coming from Chief Cheeseborough.
Okay, welcome, Chief.
Welcome, thank you. Just a quick update with regards to our emergency control group, who had a special meeting last week. We've been scheduling them every 2 weeks, but due to the changes in case numbers, we decided to have one. The health unit has indicated that when there's 20 cases per 100,000, that meets the threshold to go from green to yellow. 25 cases from yellow to orange. The medical director of health expects there will be an announcement this week. This is last week. High-risk contact tracing happening now. It's driven by 3 situations. Certainly the spread within businesses and a school. People that were infected brought it into the households and then brought it back out to the work environment. Westport's school situation settling down. However, Leeds outbreak is significant. There will be a media release which has come out since our meeting about the Gananoque situation. There's high numbers, mean that we will move to the yellow by the end of the week, might even go to orange. Discussions have been held with the province for us to move to the red numbers. Would have to be more than 40 cases per 100,000. That is just one of the items that affects the threshold. There are other items depending on where it is and the type of contact tracing that also factors into it. We're certainly at a point where we need to make precautions a priority. There has been a few sporadic cases in schools beyond the Westport area. Workplace transmission is the biggest issue. There will be a media campaign around the workplace issues that's pending. Some business infractions found on Black Friday. That included not wearing PPE, not physically distancing. Employee screening, and some restaurants had tables too close together. So the health unit is continuing to monitor that. There is a recommendation that was brought forward by the health unit that the bubbles are limited to households only. School boards will be making decisions about whether schools stay open or closed. Some municipalities are considering closing the offices over the holidays and possibly into the new year. Now that would be closing to the public while internal staff are still coming to work and doing business, just not open to the public. The vaccination distribution was discussed. Leonard-Leeds Grenville currently does not have the freezer units required to store the vaccine. They're required to be stored at -80, but Smith Falls and Perth hospitals are looking into possibly purchasing it. So right now the vaccines would go from the federal government to the provincial, to the city of Kingston, to Kingston Health Sciences, and then if it's to be distributed through Smith Falls, Lanark, Leeds, Grenville, then it'd be distributed through them. The long-term care and frontline workers would be the priority. We're uncertain about the distribution. Red zones are obviously going to be the priority. That's still being decided. Requests sent to the Ministry of Labor seeking clarification for staff to work in other departments should departments be overwhelmed or inundated with cases, and what the rules or regulations would be with regards to training, WSIB coverage, should staff work internally in other departments. Should we move to yellow or orange, there will be no major restrictions on the facilities or the continuity of operations within the municipality. The major effect will be on the restaurants and businesses that serve alcohol. The yellow will reduce the time they're permitted to be open to 12 o'clock. Should it go to orange, it'll drastically drop back to a closure at 9 o'clock for those establishments that serve alcohol. Westport and Rideau Lakes has voluntarily closed facilities due to the school outbreak. There will be messaging by the town to share workplace campaign information that's been issued by the health unit with regards to the safety of businesses. The health unit is also requesting that we ensure precautions are in place, but we look at the actions through the COVID lens. And remember that social distancing and masks are critical, as well as the social bubbles. Kids are not in a bubble at school. So there are precautions at school. And again, Christmas, people need to stay within their households. Single individuals who live by themselves can choose one or another household to go to, but not back and forth is the recommendation. There will be a creation of a video message from the mayor and Dr. Stewart. It had in the CMC, but it's just the mayor and Dr. Stewart with regards to our current state and what people should and shouldn't be doing. The press release from December 7th covers the key messaging. We did discuss and we'll be looking at the restriction of employees, more than one employee in a vehicle. We'll monitor the situation to see if further restrictions are required. And safety of food delivery programs was discussed. And currently in the yellow, there are no additional restrictions that are required. That is my update for tonight, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Chief. And again, we appreciate all the work that the MCG does to keep us safe. But just to confirm, and Councillor McKenna, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks very much, Chief. I was on a call with Dr. Stewart this morning, and we just talked briefly about the vaccination. And you're going to hear this over and over. I'm asking people, and she will be asking people as the messaging comes out, is to be patient. For healthy people like ourselves, this will be some time before we'll be vaccinated. And for those of you who are really nervous about being vaccinated or sitting on the fence, not sure if you should or shouldn't, you have time. The information will come out. I know I'll be getting vaccinated at some point. I would encourage you to think about it, look at the science. And I encourage the public not to be blaming people who choose not to be vaccinated or trying to shame them. A lot of people are thinking about it and they aren't sure yet. But as we go along, we'll get more and better information as we go along, and you'll have time to make up your mind. So don't close the door to vaccination just yet. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, thanks, Chief. And, it's a little bit of a sobering message. I guess my question is, and actually I did see the video with Dr. Stewart and the mayor, and it was very well done. And that's the type of messaging we got to keep up with. But I guess my question is in terms of the zones that we're in. I guess we're in yellow now, and I think there might be a possibility we'll move on from that. But for the Chief Medical Officer of Health for our health unit, she has the discretion, does she not, under Section 23 to make that determination, or does she have to wait for Dr. Williams, the Ontario Chief Medical Officer of Health?
Through the chair, yeah, under Section 22, and we did bring that we did bring that 22. Up with Dr. Stewart. The medical directors of health simply provide the Ontario government with the numbers, with the areas. and the type of outbreaks, whether it's households or businesses or schools, it's the province that will turn around and advise based on that information exactly when you switch stages. But Dr. Stewart did indicate that it wouldn't be a surprise that after going to yellow, then we quickly go to orange within a day or so, just based on the physical numbers they're receiving.
But it would be her call or the province's call?
It'd be the province of Ontario that makes that decision.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for the chief? So we are in yellow, which indicates protect, which is, I'm going to echo what everyone else has said. This is the time now to protect ourselves, our families, and our neighbors by staying home as much as possible. So thank you, Chief. And CAO, you had also a report?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. Thank you. Council may recall back in the spring, AMO had asked its members to comment on their preferred transition date for the Blue Box program. This is transitioning to full producer responsibility. So you did that. On June 15th, you passed a resolution asking for a transition date of January 1st, 2023. The transition period will be 3 years long, starting in 2023. And so we asked to get out of the gate early, so to speak. With that in mind, the province also issued a regulation, a draft regulation under what's called the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act. And within that act will be the transition to full producer responsibility. In any event, the draft came out, and we leaned on, as many municipalities did, AMO's insight and expertise in this area to provide comment. So I'm just informing you that we endorse the AMO submission to the province of Ontario about the act. There were, overall, it's a good piece of legislation. There were a few areas that perhaps need more attention, things like auditing on the part of producers and things like that. I won't go into details. But the reason I'm bringing this up now is the draft regulation also contains a transition schedule. So they've identified all municipalities in the province with their transition date. And the fact is, the requested dates that we send to AMO don't always align with what the province is saying our transition date should be. So we asked for January 1st, 2023. They assigned us January 1st, 2025. I'm not sure the logic behind it, but I did circle back to the province to say, please reconsider that. We want to start January 1st, 2023. So I'm just bringing that to your attention. I expect there'll be a lot of work on this file over the winter months, and I would think late winter, early spring, we'll see what the province comes up with. And of course, I'll keep you apprised of any developments. But you should be aware that we didn't get the date that we were hoping for, but I am hopeful that logic will prevail. Most of the Ottawa area, catchment area, is in a 2023 transition date. We're right on the boundary between Ottawa and the rest of Eastern Ontario. So we've asked to be put in the Ottawa area start date. So as that develops, I'll keep you up to date, but that's more of an FYI for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the CAO? Seeing none. There are no, that's the end of them, CAO Morse? Okay.
Correct.
That brings us, where there are no correspondence items tonight, so that brings us to our priority issues. And as discussed earlier, we're going to switch things around. So I will ask Mayor Panko to take on 2020 housing report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think all of council and many of the community have reviewed this fairly exhaustive report. And it relates back to December 16th last year when the Housing Task Force had its first meeting. Numerous meetings through the first part of last year, slowed initially by the pandemic, reinvigorated as we moved through, delivered a report, the initial report, interim report to council about 2 months ago, a little less than 2 months ago, I believe. And here we are with the final report and recommendations. And this is relates obviously to one of our top strategic priorities. And it was, I think, a clear priority based on the profound need in our community when this new council launched 2 years ago. Today, that priority, I think, is even more critical. I hear probably on a very frequent basis, probably weekly or so, from a citizen in our community who is at risk of being homeless or is looking for a place to live, who is facing critical challenges in trying to pay their rent. And I look at my responsibility to try at least connect them to resources who can potentially help them, whether that be legal help, whether that be county housing, and be social services. But we know that more and more of our population are becoming really at risk of being homeless if they're not homeless now. We also recognize that there are more and more families across the county who are currently housed in hotels as they have lost their place to live. That's not a long-term solution. The needs are great. We've committed as a council to doing what we can to create an environment which will encourage the development of more affordable housing. And this report obviously does that. So demographically, I guess we're all aware that traditionally and for a long time, Smiths Falls had probably a higher than average percentage of people who were living below the poverty line, below the low income measure. We have quite a large number of population who are relying on Ontario Disability Support Program or Ontario Works. And if someone's been living in one place for a while, they may be okay and they may be somewhat affordable today. But the moment anyone has to move today, they face critical challenges. And we know that rents have risen significantly in the last few years. We've seen a rise in our local economy, a lot of incredible positives when it comes to growth and property values, but we know that many people are being left behind. If you think of let's say a low-income senior even, who is making $2,000 a month on a fixed income, that individual likely cannot afford much more than 30% of their income on housing, $600 a month. That's impossible to find today. If they were lucky, they can probably find something for about $1,200 a month. Yeah, so if you take someone who's earning $2,000 a month, if you're spending 60% on housing, you haven't got enough left over to cover the rest. And as a result, needs emerge from other places. So I'm very excited for the work the Housing Task Force has completed, obviously with staff, Planner Grenke and Director of Corporate Services, Carrie Costello, who spent a huge amount of time in preparing this document. There are 16 recommendations. And the key opportunity tonight, the key question we face tonight is simply the adoption of this report, which will then lead staff to develop the action plans to ensure that we follow the steps we need to follow to encourage the development of more affordable housing within our community. And as I said, I would like to see this happen as quickly as possible. The first step is adoption, and then we can move ahead with action plans. So at that point, I'll take questions. And if there are questions that are more appropriate for our planner to handle, I'm sure Carl is here and available to assist.
So any questions with regard to the housing report from council? It is a lengthy document, and Councillor McKenna and then Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to congratulate the task force on the report and for their hard work, and the staff. And staff are part of that task force. So it's very comprehensive. It's more of a comment that I know there are people in our community that are very concerned about the housing issue, and they're advocating and organizing, and that's a good thing. And often from the surface, it doesn't look like there's a lot going on because they don't see buildings being built. But when you look at all the range of services, it's not always about the number of buildings. It's all those other support programs to keep people in their houses, or money going into domiciliary hostels to help people, rent support, and the list is quite long. So I just I hope the public do read this document, because you have to go deeper. It's not just about new bricks and mortar, although that's important. And it's not enough, but there's quite a bit going on. And I think the report is an excellent way to bring it to the public's attention in one compiled, beautiful little document. So Thank you for doing this work on behalf of council.
Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is an exhaustive document, and I congratulate the committee for putting it together. I guess my question is, and you know, there's I think you said 16 recommendations, and some of them are policy changing and you know, quite transformational. But when we come to making these changes, my question is in terms of some of the planning stuff, is that going to come through the regular planning committee and then to council to discuss? Because it's almost like an omnibus type of thing. And it's a great plan. I'm not saying it's not, but is there going to be further discussion around the table? Because there's a lot in here. And I hope that we can discuss each one as it comes up.
Okay, go ahead, CEO Morris, I guess. Yeah, sorry, Madam Chair.
The CEO Morris, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, but absolutely. I mean, what you're seeing is an exhaustive study with recommendations for council's consideration. So each one will make its way through various committees and onto council for adoption. Because as you mentioned, many of them are policy initiatives, change in policy.
Yeah, thanks. And through the chair, I just wanted to confirm that because it is a huge document. So much work went into it, but it's substantive change. So each one has to be looked at, I think, in my opinion, by council and talked about with all the background involved. I know that the committee that worked on this did a whole lot of work, but we need to look at each one as it stands. So I'm glad to do that.
Any other questions for Mayor Panko? No, and I also am aware how much early on I was monitoring until we got COVID and we had to go virtual. I was monitoring the task force meetings, and it was really heartening to see the involvement of the business community and realtors and developers and not-for-profits and the county themselves. And I know that our mayor and Councillor Allen were knee deep in it for many months. So there's a lot to digest here, but I do think that we are moving in the right direction. And now the trick will be to move this as quickly as we can through to having these changes made. So I echo both Councillor Brennan and McKenna and say congratulations to get it this far. And it is exhaustive, and we'll probably all have to read it 2 or 3 times before we fully process all that's in there. But in the meantime, your task force members were key to getting us this far. So we appreciate their efforts as well.
Thank you. And it provides that framework that I'm confident will help lead to the development of more affordable housing units in town. And I think it's already led to 6, right? We have 6 which have been approved in 2 different developments. And I also believe that we likely wouldn't have the 6 if it wasn't for the work of the task force. And of course, the next item on the agenda also relates to some of the work of the task force and recommendations. So we're excited to move ahead with this. We've got an item on, this has been moved to our council agenda for adoption tonight. As it relates directly to the next agenda item and municipal support for a new initiative. So thank you for your support, and I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. So that brings us to some of the results of the task force and the work that the task force and our own mayor have been doing for more than a year now. And that is the Rapid Housing Initiative report, and that is with CEO Morris.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. So the theme tonight is housing and rapidity. This is as quick as things move in any government, I can assure you. What we have in front of us tonight is a tremendous opportunity to build affordable housing, and it all comes from the federal government's National Housing Strategy that they released, I think it was in 2017. And from that, a whole host of initiatives flowed out of it. And one of them is the recently announced Rapid Housing Initiative. So it's a significant amount of money, $1 billion across the country, and 500 million of that is earmarked for municipalities of our size. And we've had a close look at this, and through the mayor's hard work and facilitating discussions and getting people together, CareBridge stepped up and have agreed to lead an application process to help us move forward with affordable housing. So I won't go through the report. There's a lot of information there, but I think what's important is that CareBridge have agreed to take this on as the lead applicant and the owner of the property. But they are looking for support, municipal support, not necessarily in the form of upfront cash, but more the commitment to look at our funding opportunities that exist, primarily through our CIP program, and have asked for a resolution to support and strengthen their application to CMHC, which will be submitted next Monday. So the potential opportunity for municipal support would be through our CIP program, as I mentioned, particularly the reimbursement of planning and building fees as one example. Another possibility is the tax abatement stream. We'll need to have a closer look at that one, but the point is there are several avenues that the town can contribute to this worthwhile project. So we have with us this evening Robert Eves from CareBridge, if there are specific questions about the project, because they are leading it. And of course, the mayor's well versed on this as well. So perhaps I'll pause there, and we do have a draft resolution that is attached to the agenda, and we're looking for support for the resolution.
Thank you. And if there are questions, then please pose them, and the right person will answer them for it. Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Rob, for joining us tonight. I'm so excited to see that CareBridge is going to make a move down to Smiths Falls. I mean, you guys are such a valuable player up north of 7 where you are right now, and you're one of the few players that really does provide affordable housing in a not-for-profit setting. So I'm so thankful that you guys have come to take a look at Smiths Falls, and I really do hope that you find great success in town. Can you provide a bit of a synopsis for us to help better understand how you go through a selection process for tenants?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, honorable councilors, Mayor, for having us here tonight, or me. And just to Malcolm's point, we will take upfront cash if you want to give it to us. Selection process can vary. The way it works for us now, however, is we work within operating agreements that we have with the county. So every individual who we house currently goes through the county selection process, which is they apply, the application is based on income and other factors in their life, and then they're slotted for housing as depending on priority basis or just on essentially where they fall within the general list. The list, as some of you may be aware, quite lengthy now. With this project, we're not necessarily subject to an operating agreement, although we are looking at that possibility with the county. We could look at other options, but currently that's how we do it now. So that means, for instance, some groups are higher on the list. So individuals who report having a disability, as an example, might fall higher on the list because they're considered to be more vulnerable. Or if they identify as a senior, they could be slotted for housing that's specifically identified for seniors. That's the system we've been using to date and has served us well overall. Again, though, with this project, it could look different because with the RHI funding, it could cover up to 100% of our capital costs, which we're not carrying in a mortgage, which would be fantastic. And the first time ever in my entire career having any type of grant like this could lead to a different approach if we were interested in it. We
Thanks.
would be looking, though, as part of the application to make everything RGI or rent geared income. So part of, and then I'll stop talking, part of this application process is that this housing project and others funded by this call is deeply affordable. And that's the MHE's expression, which means the barrier to the housing is very low in terms of finances.
Thank you, Rob. And Madam Chair, one more question, if I may. I appreciated looking at the plans for the proposal that there's a varied selection of the number of bedrooms for units, which in the outcome of the staff report that came forward with housing initiatives, there was a demonstrated need for a variety of types of housing for family structures of all different sizes. So I have to say, I do really appreciate the fact that you guys have given that some consideration and scoped your project a deliverable to the local needs. The only other question I had, oh no, I think I lost it. I'm so sorry. What was my last question?
We can return to you.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. I lost it.
Any other questions at this point for Mr. Eves from Council? Councillor McKenna, then Councillor Allen.
Thank you very much. It's a very exciting report. I hope it gets funded. My question, Rob, is this the only application going in under this funding stream by your organization?
Yeah. We're
So
putting
they
all
want-
our chips on this one.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Councillor Allen?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank CareBridge for taking this project on, and I look forward to having them in our community. I know that they have a great reputation, and this is something that our community will really benefit from. It's something that we've needed for a long time, so it's exciting news for us, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. We're pretty excited ourselves on this. We've been looking for opportunities, and Sean was, Mayor Panko was very early on in our sort of call out to the county to say we'd like to do more about this issue outside of our current domain. He was the first to step up and say Smith Falls really could use some of the kind of work you're doing in other areas of the county. And we've been working actively since then. So that's over a year and a bit ago since we started that conversation. So it's kind of cool to see it where it's at now. And just so you know, you didn't ask this question, but I'm going to answer it in advance. If this doesn't come through for us, the RHI, we plan to continue to push on other avenues. So there will be a project on that site. If it doesn't, we're not successful under this tranche of funding, will persist and continue to find the right home for it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Brennan, did I see your hand?
Yep. Thanks, Rob, and thanks for all the work you do in moving south. It's great. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but it's a substantial project. Do we know the value? I know that from what I understand, that the rapid funding is about $500 million outside of urban centers. And what do you have any sort of notion of what this is worth?
Probably between 7 and 10 million. It's the within CMHC's current sort of guidelines, if you will. It's not written, but it's essentially they're looking at up to about 300,000 per door. That's not written anywhere, though. We wouldn't need 300,000 per door, we don't think, but we are also exploring new territory. In this case, we're looking at modular build, so we don't have a full sense of what the costs are. They're currently working on that, and we'll know them closer by next week. But based on our experience to date, we're probably at least 5-6 million under a traditional approach. It could be more expensive because I know that building materials, for instance, wood has gone up 40% in the last year. So our costs are going to be a little bit more than they used to. I doubt we'll top 300,000 per door though. We're looking at 28 units, would put us in the realm of about 8.2 million.
Great. Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Rob.
Councillor-
Thank you.
Councillor Dwyer, did you recall?
Did, thank you. One of the other things that was identified in the housing report was concerns about residency tenancy in secure housing. Rob, can you give us an idea of the tenure that you see your tenants experiencing in Carebridge Homes?
I'd have a hard time quantifying it in years, but I can say that for the most part, we have very low turnover rates with our tenants. We view all of our housing as permanent housing, if you will, not transitional. So we have very little in and out. I couldn't say scientifically, but based on my experience since I've been at Carebridge, I couldn't say what our turnover rate is overall, but I know that it's very, very low.
No, I think that's sufficient, Rob. And I mean, I just wanted to impress upon my fellow councillors that this development really does tick all the boxes that were identified within the housing and homelessness strategy or housing strategy that we're adopting. And I mean, it's great to see that there's a reputable management company that's coming in to help us in kind of creating an apartment building that's going to fill that void. I think the management and the social services that come with Carebridge are the crucial component that make it different in providing a supportive housing for tenants. I think it's wonderful that we have X number, I think Sean said 6 units of affordable housing that are going to be created within the community, but I think it's the other added social benefits that Carebridge offers that makes your tenancy so successful and so rewarding within the community. So thank you. I fully endorse this application, and I really do hope that through the CIP we can find a way to kind of turn this into a triple partnership opportunity.
Thanks, Nikki.
Councillor McGuire? You're muted, Councillor McGuire.
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for coming out tonight, Rob. It's been I really appreciated how you and Jeff have really invested in meeting with stakeholders in our community, answering our questions, really helping to illustrate what your products look like, because we just don't have anything like that in Smith Falls. So really exciting to see this application come together as the fruit of all that work. And I think the location couldn't be better. This is centrally located. It's a lot that's really struggled to see redevelopment for as long as I can remember now. And I think it'll bring much needed infill, but also be centrally located to services, parks, etc. So really excited by that. I was interested to hear that your tenants are screened by Lanark County before when you guys are filling a building. And I was wondering if you could elaborate and explain. My understanding is that Lanark County does social housing. You guys are doing affordable housing. I don't know if that's correct or not. And what's the difference between the two products?
That's a good question. So I think the county would on the whole also say they're doing affordable housing. There's been a strong movement away from the concept of social housing because it has a lot of negative aspects attached to it, that it's, large and institutional and doesn't, necessarily blend with the community that it's in, or it sort of ghettoizes, if you will, for lack of a better term, certain portions of the population. We at Carebridge, and I think the county would say the same, but I won't speak on their behalf, have moved toward a model that looks to diversify communities. So that's really the difference between affordable housing, is that there's a mix of individuals, families, and others who find themselves in our housing. So when the county sends us individuals, we also continue to look at the right fit for them and where they would be best situated within our housing. So we don't just say, well, you're next on the list, you get the next apartment kind of thing. So we work collaboratively, although the key there is that within our developments, we're able to then make sure that there's a adequate diversity of people in. So for instance, we do have dedicated buildings for seniors, but the rest of our buildings then are for families, for individuals. Some of them may be working, some of them may not be working, some of them may need accessible or barrier-free design. Some may be coming from transitional housing into more permanent housing. But always our key thing we keep in mind is, will this be the most successful fit for these individuals when they're coming in? They also have a part in it as well. We don't just say, here you go, like it or lump it kind of thing. The rules now are pretty sticky though, in terms of declining housing opportunities. You don't get a lot of choices, but we do our best to make sure people still have a choice within what we can offer them. So affordable housing really is about making sure you're responding to the needs of the tenants or potential tenants, whereas social housing is about responding to an economic need, for lack of a better term, that is blind really to what the needs of the individuals are beyond strictly needing affordable rent. And the movement away from that has been a good movement.
That's exciting. It sounds like you're really building communities instead of just building an institution that gets filled up. So second and last question is, with the CIP program, I think there's an opportunity for a really exciting partnership and some significant cost savings, but I'm wondering, with the price per unit that we've budgeted, will there be any challenges to build the complex to the town's downtown design guidelines?
So far, we seem okay. There's maybe we've looked at it, there might be needs. We're trying to avoid territory that puts us into need for variances, only because of the timeline that we're running on for this. Having said that, be perfectly honest, right now in our meetings, we haven't so far run up against any major costs that are attributed to town requirements, which has been fantastic. And we've had the involvement from early days of the mayor and the CAO, as well as the planner, in our discussion. So that's helped us try to avoid finding out later that we designed it in a way that's going to cost us more than was really needed. And we have a very experienced other partners as well at the table. So we have everyone looking at that. Right now, we haven't run up against any major pieces except for parking, which is something that's in the previous report that you were speaking of, and may be resolved before we hit the ground, may not. We're not putting any pressure, but that's one of the design aspects that we've been working pretty hard on to make sure we fit everything on our lot.
Great, thanks, Rob.
Councilor McKenna.
Sorry, if I could have a follow-up. Just one of the criteria, as I understand the program, is that financial sustainability over 20 years and having a plan to be sustainable is critical and will get you the points you need to probably put you over the top. Was there any consideration, or is there consideration for any of the units being at market rent as a way to, to offset some of the costs? And I have one more question after that, if I could.
Sure, no problem. Yes, definitely. That's the model we currently use and has worked best for us to make it affordable. The one difference here is we will be, because we could potentially be mortgage free, we'll be less dependent on that mix, but it's still something we'd want to consider because people's circumstances will change. So we don't want to, for instance, have someone who comes and joins us. And we have many like this at Caribridge who came to us when they would have difficulty affording market rent, but later on in their tenancy with us have acquired jobs, changes in life. At that point, they just go to market rent, which makes it sustainable for them because that's their home now, as well as makes it sustainable for the actual housing. So yes, it is an option, but we're less dependent on it in this scenario.
Okay, and if I may, I know you said you'd be happy to take money from the town. I'm assuming you're a registered charity, and so if there were members of Smiths Falls community or the business community that wanted to donate, they could get a tax receipt and they could tie it directly to this project if they wanted to give?
That's correct. Yeah, there's,
Okay.
in fact, although we haven't undertaken that because this has been moving so quickly, we are a
Yeah.
registered charity. And we do have a partner who's coming in who will be, we don't know yet the exact magnitude, but in the community who's looking to place some equity into this project. So we wouldn't stop anyone else from doing the same.
Great, thank you.
Mayor Banco?
So it's wonderful to hear such encouraging feedback from councilors tonight. This project obviously is life-changing for the probably roughly 50 people that will be able to live here. As Councilor McGuire said, perfect location. It really ticks off that box. It's close to amenities, close to the downtown, very convenient for everybody. As Councillor Dwyer mentioned, a variety of unit sizes to accommodate everything from single people to couples to small families to larger families. Again, in a great location and in a great new environment. So it's I look at this being the perfect formula for success. And when we started discussions maybe about a year and a half ago, it was hard to imagine where that would lead. But I knew for certainty at that time, if we were going to complete something in Smiths Falls, we had to have the partnership of a not-for-profit who had the experience and capability and willingness to do something. And so I think we're all eternally grateful to Rob and CareBridge for taking the lead on this and for recognizing that there are needs within our community and there's an opportunity here through more than a once in a generation type of initiative from the federal government, possibility of 100% financing, but a very exhaustive application process, a scoring system which requires, or the more points you can tick off, the better chance you have of success, and municipal support and support from other outside agencies can help contribute to a positive score. And as mentioned earlier, it's $1 billion initiative. The 15 largest cities in Canada got 500 million, and then everybody, us and larger municipalities can apply for the balance of 500 million. And I think the advantage we have is the short time frame. And so we knew on September 28th that this was announced that something was coming down the pipe. By mid-October, the details were there. Rob and his team mobilized very quickly, and within a period of a couple of months, we'll go from an idea to a completed concept and an application. And then once approved, the project has to be completed within 12 months and occupied. So this is, when it says rapid, and I think as Malcolm alluded to earlier, in the municipal world, this is extremely fast to go from idea to completion, probably certainly less than a year and a half. So extremely encouraging. So Rob, I can't thank you and your team enough, how quickly you responded, how you pulled out all the stuff to get everybody necessary on board and got us to the point where we are today. So I'm grateful that our council is so solidly behind this. We look forward to the submission of the application. We'll add our support at council tonight on the resolution, and we look forward to this progressing and coming back so we can utilize the elements of our CIP to provide our support.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor.
I add my unqualified support to that of my colleagues, and this is exciting. And the one thing I don't believe anybody has actually mentioned, although it is in the report, is that this property is at 44 Chambers, which is across from Giant Tiger. So for those who haven't read the report, it is in a almost perfect location for something of this nature. So if there are no other questions, this is going to move forward tonight in keeping with our Operation Warp Speed on this project. We'll move it to council tonight, Rob, and you do have our gratitude. This will help 28 families or singles that as Sean has alluded, as we've all been told, is in dire need. Now we're going to have to work on getting some more, right, Sean?
Still working at it.
Working at it.
We're
Thanks
with
so
you.
much. Thanks so much, Rob, for coming tonight, and thanks so much for the efforts that you're putting forward.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Councillors. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Good news, really good news. Okay, so it is just 10 to 5 and we are moving along rather well. So we're going to go right to the second draft budget report, which is with Mrs. Kozil, and maybe I will call a bio break in another hour or so, just so we can shake it off and keep our energy level up for hour 2 of the budget. So please, you have the floor, Treasurer Kozil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Dave, if you could bring up the presentation for me, please. So next slide, Dave, please. So we're here this evening with our second draft of the budget. On November 23rd, the first draft was presented to Council. If you recall, at that time, there was a shortfall to the tax-supported capital budget of $974,000. And staff were directed to go back and take a look at both the operational for cost savings and to provide some scenarios back to Council, some options to see how we could close up that shortfall in the capital side. So adjustments were made to the second draft operational budget, a decrease of $135,000, bringing our operational budget down to $17.7 million. So in Schedule 3, there was a listing of what those adjustments were. For the most part, it was overall decrease to our group benefits. They were originally projected quite high at 10.3. That was reduced down to 4.1, which was some cost savings of about 58,000. Staff also looked over the travel, conferences, and training budgets due to COVID. As we know, things are probably going to be in a bit of a holding pattern for the next year, 3/4 of a year. So there were some cost savings there of about 40,000. There was some money still remaining in the reserve for the community donations. So that was transferred over to the budget of 13,000. And delaying the borrowing for the Beckwith Street reconstruction because it won't be picked up again until spring, and there may be some surplus there. So it'll be a delay in the loan. So that's about 15,000, and also trade shows of 6,000. We also were able to revise our preliminary projections for taxation. We don't have the actual, we just received the actual roll on late Friday, but we haven't had a chance to review that yet. But with the supplemental billings that we received in November, we were able to go back through and find some additional taxation revenue. The net of that was about 144, and then the vacancy rebate, we took a look at that and felt we could decrease that by another 10,000. So you're looking at additional 290,000 in operational. So then staff took a look at the capital budget and provided 2 options. The option one is a revised scope of the complex renovations. And within my report, we kind of gave the rationale as to why the funding, there was a webinar held that staff attended for the funding. We cannot proceed, we can't even commence with this project until federal approval, which is not anticipated until the spring of next year. And the completion of this project has to take place at the end of next year, which just didn't give a lot of time to do design and construction. So staff came forward with doing the design as well as a potential lift, the construction of the lift only. And then it would be the full design and then carry forward in the following year for the remainder of the construction. So with option one, which is staff's recommendation, the shortfall of about 26,000 will be offset by the savings we found in the operational budget. Option two, staff took a look and had offered up some potentials for deferrals and reductions. That one is a shortfall of about 395,000. Two, we had an increase to a project on Cornelia, as well as a new for County Road 43, which was a County of Lanark joint tender. We offset that with potential additional borrowing. We were able to defer some borrowing in 2020, so that basically would be offset by that. So as I had noted, the increase in the taxation. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is the education rates are still not confirmed, but they have been consistently decreasing since 2008. So we assume, well, we do know that the business and commercial is being reduced, just haven't got those figures quite confirmed just yet. And we also received confirmation of the OSIF formula-based funding, which was 605, which was included in the first draft. So that's good news. So the next slide, Dave. And as noted in the first draft, the county shared services come in at quite a substantial increase this year, which two were based on some capital projects. We did send a proposal to the county for their consideration to possibly do this over a repayment plan of a 10-year period, where we're still awaiting a response. If they were receptive to that, that would decrease the operational budget about $257,000. As noted in the first draft, the insurance premiums are quite high. We did go back to our provider, and we thought we would still continue with erring on that side of caution. As noted, the group benefits did decrease from 10.3 to 4.1. Still, we are at a shortfall to the capital reserve from 2020 of about $342,000. Next slide. So this is the highlights from the first draft of the capital budget until such time as council provides direction within the two drafts, or perhaps a combination thereof. These are some of the highlights from that first draft. Next slide. So this evening, these are the action and direction required from council. As noted, item 1, the first draft and the second draft are inclusive of rate increases to the taxes, water and wastewater, and the CPI, which is 1.1, and that is holding for the period ending October 31st. I checked today, November's are not posted as of yet. Item 2, the hospital donation, we required council's direction on that. The request was up for $174,000. Item 3, the CIP currently does not have anything denoted in the budget. There is $15,000 remaining in reserve. Item 4, there are 2 options provided to council for consideration for the capital. And the next slide. And the final direction is there was for a virtual public open house, and if council wishes to proceed with that, we're proposing 2 tentative dates, one being December 21st and the other one January 4th. So Dave, if I could get you to go back to the previous slide, those are the sort of the items we need to go through with council. So if council had any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. I can't see anyone. So if Janet, are we able to take that
Absolutely.
off the screen?
Yep. Yep.
There's everyone. We'll have lots of questions, I'm sure, for Janet, but I, as the chair, because I'll be making sure that I want to see everybody's voices heard tonight, I'm just going to take this opportunity to go first, if council doesn't mind. I'm just going to, just a few comments. And again, everyone will chime in on these, I'm sure, but these are my general comments. I do think that 1.1 is a little low, and I think we should increase that to some degree. Council will decide to what degree, but I think 1.1 CPI is a little too low given what we are facing and what we are hoping to accomplish. I also think we should consider, we want to support our hospital, but perhaps we don't have to support it to the tune of $175,000. Thirdly, probably lastly, because other things will come up, I am not in favor of delaying the town hall phase 3 at all. It has waited for a very long, I know what the ramifications of that are, in that the 175 for the resiliency funding we would not be able to access that. But and just as an everyday example, our staff haven't had any heat since I think last Thursday or Friday. It'll be fixed tomorrow. But the town hall renovations to finish that is in our strategic plan for 2021. And I think if it is necessary, we have the borrowing power to accomplish that in 2021. And I'm hopeful that council can find their way through to finishing town hall and having that off of our plate. We have more revenue coming, and we know we have several apartment buildings going up. Some of our council went to see the Lapine ones last week. So we have growth happening and no sign of it really stopping. So I'm very adverse to going too far away from the strategic plan we've put in front of us. And so I would ask council to consider borrowing the money that we need to finish town hall. So I've had my say now, and I'll wait to hear what others questions that people have or comments people have with regard to what Treasurer Gozil has told us. Mayor Panko.
Thank you. And thanks to staff for obviously a lot of very heavy lifting and a lot of work, detailed analysis of the budget to come back with our second option, I guess our second review of the budget. I agree that I think the 1.1 is low. I do think there is some room to move there. We have to remember that the assessment rates have been frozen, so there will be no bump in assessment. So really a 1.1% increase simply means that's a 1.1 to a homeowner, no impact by any change in assessment. So if that was 2% and 2% on maybe the average tax bill of, and Janet could probably help me, but I'm guessing $3,000 or somewhere around there, $3,500, would be another $60 to $70 probably for our average home owner. And so I'm agreeable to seeing some movement there. The hospital, I appreciate your comments, Madam Chair. It's one I feel quite strongly about, and it's one that our allocation was based on what I believe is a very fair formula, based on our weighted assessment, based on our population, and based on our visits to our hospital. And so every municipality across the catchment area has been allotted an amount. We were the first municipality to step up, and that led to broader support from numerous municipalities across the catchment area. And I think somewhere around $600,000 a year coming in from between the county and different municipalities, as well as others which maybe have been a little bit slow getting to the table, but I understand are very potentially engaged right now for 2021. The key thing here is that without municipal support, our hospital will be very challenged to meet its capital needs, its capital equipment, overall capital equipment needs. And I think we recognize we're living in a world where the latest of everything from a technology standpoint is critically important to look out for the needs of our residents. And furthermore, we want to make sure that if we're going to attract and retain the best physicians to look after our people, they need the equipment to work with. So it's an issue where if we pull back on our support, I fear it could lead to a domino effect, which could lead to reduction in support elsewhere. And that leaves the hospital grappling with trying to find other methods. There are positives happening when it comes to fundraising at the hospital, the amalgamation of foundations, but that their objectives are outside of the municipal support across the catchment area. So there's still a need for the foundations to do even more than they've ever done before in order to try and meet the needs. So that's my thoughts on the hospital. Item 3, the CIP. I know we have 15,000 left in reserves there. We have to remember that we recently approved supporting a RED grant to provide 20 downtown properties with facade improvements. So conceptual drawings for facade improvements on Beckwith Street. We've got a beautiful new street. We have an opportunity to enhance the streetscape that streetscape enhancement doesn't happen without CIP funding. And I understand that the 20 businesses, storefronts that will be identified and have drawings completed in the first part of the year, it will be done by mid-year. So that would enable some to step forward and take advantage of CIP funding. And when you look at the maximum facade improvement grant being $10,000, if we had 50,000 in the CIP, all we would need is 5 of the 20 to step up and say, I want to do something. Not to mention all the other potential businesses in the CIP at catchment area that could utilize that as happened this year and each year for the last 5 years. So I think we need to make sure that we step up and do what we can there. And finally, on municipal complex renovations, yes, our staff in the unrenovated part of the building have been struggling without centralized heat the last week, and heaters are in place, but certainly not able to do the job the way that it should. I'd be interested in learning more about what we can do there. I'm not opposed to borrowing on this. As I mentioned the last time we discussed this, there may be merit in ultimate cost savings in doing it earlier, even we had to borrow it to do it, understanding the cost of construction is rising so rapidly that to do the project in the future could be more costly. But I also want to make sure if we're going to do it that way, we can do it while retaining the federal grant in order to get the lift completed. So I'm sure there's a way of phasing that work. I don't want to lose the 195,000, I think it is. But I'm also want to make sure that if possible, we move ahead with that part of the project. And I'll reserve any further comments for later.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak? Councillor Allen.
Yeah, excuse me, I have a sore throat tonight, so my voice is odd. Like the mayor, I am not prepared to not give the hospital the donation they asked for. I've had, during this COVID outbreak, I've had a number of people that I love in the hospital, and I think it's an amazing asset to our community, and I think they're asking what they need. I'm not prepared to not give them that. I'm also I'm prepared to do more than 1.1 as well, as some of my colleagues have already said. I'm also, I'm interested in keeping the CIP. I think especially given what's going to happen in the next year, it's really important for us to continue with that. The complex renovation, I would be okay with Janet's recommendation, but I like the mayor and others, I think we could borrow for that too. I think the important thing is we get the lift and the money that's associated with that, but I think that we could borrow for that and get the whole thing done as well. I think that's my comments on that.
Thank you. Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm hoping somebody is keeping a tick list of who's voting for what. But I'll start. I'm not in favor of supporting a rate increase in excess of 1.1. I think this is not the year to do it, and I think any amount of relief that we can provide to property owners and ratepayers is much warranted in 2021. I think the fact that we are not seeing a phased-in assessment increase is an added bonus that works to that end goal, but I don't think that should be used as an excuse to continue to increase the rate level to make up for the assessment not being increased this year. The hospital, I can't think of a better year to support the hospital with COVID going on. I've never been so thankful to have top-notch healthcare services within my community. And I think, like Sean said, I think it's going to be a step backwards if we, as the home of the Smiths Falls Hospital, don't step up and provide the financial support that they so badly need. So I would like to see that added in. The CIP, my gut says that we should not back off on that at this point. I think we're at a critical point. We're 5 years in. This thing is starting to develop some real meaningful traction within the community. This is the first year that we've really seen the number of grant applications increase both in complexity and volume. So I think for those reasons, we should continue. I get the point that Councillor McGuire was trying to make at presentation number 1 about the fact that we have an opportunity to take a pause while we wait for the RED grant to materialize and develop a bit of a conceptual plan for what those buildings could be. But I think it would be a mistake to back away from funding that program, particularly given that we are officially through the investment in Beckwith Street for the majority of downtown. So I think it's a good opportunity for businesses to now kind of make their interface with that public space more relatable. And that's why that CIP program was there in the first place. As far as capital goes, I'm not one to say no to free money. So if we can defer part of that project in favor of grant funding down the line, even if it is a chance, I think it's worth doing. I know that's unfortunate for the staff that work in that building. The good news is I think most of them are now fully equipped to be remote working. So if the building does not have heat, then I'm sure that they can co-locate in other spaces, COVID safe, of course, or alternatively work from home. I mean, the issues with this building are not new. There was one year that it got so cold in there that the plumbing froze. Like staff are kind of used to it. And I hate to say that, but it's true. And I think if it doesn't happen this year, it's going to happen in 2022. It's inevitable that it has to happen probably within the next 3 years. And I'd rather wait out the funding opportunities to see what we can do there. Janet, I do have just a general question. On the operating side, can you indicate whether or not there's any new hires included in this budget or step increases in excess of CPI increases for staff? Are there any contract positions that are coming up for conclusion this round? Is there any amount of leeway there?
There is no new hires. There
Okay.
is some students in there. Step increases, I believe, are higher than CPI when you're going step,
Yep.
like within a band. So there are people that are in line for, provided their performance evaluation, they're successful there, they would go up in the band, or in the step within the band. So those are included.
Okay.
Mhm.
Plus a CPI on top of that. The bands itself will inflate by CPI.
Well, depending on what is the non-union agreement, right, or staff are now going forward with potentially an increase to within our hourly rates. That hasn't been approved yet. So there is some extra in there when and if that's decided. Like right now, QP, non-union, fire, all being negotiated. So
Yeah.
there is some in there for that.
Okay, and what about the non-union?
It's in there as well. There's an
Okay.
increase in 2021 for that purpose, yes.
Okay, but what is the quantifiable value of that increase? Just CPI?
I'm not, certainly.
Sorry, Wendy, you're muted.
All 3 of those contracts are under negotiation right now, Councillor Dwyer, so there is no, like, I don't know that anybody has that answer for you right now.
No, fair enough. Sorry, I'm a little, because we've got so many contracts with so many different factions of staff. So all 3 are presently in negotiation, or the non-union is not right now?
They are.
All 3 are.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave that. Besides that, Janet, on your last point about virtual public meetings, I'm fine with the schedule that you've set and the format included. I think we'll probably actually have better participation that way. So I think those were the 5 points up for discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Janet, for the work on this and for also the effort in trying to reduce the operating budget, I think about 135,000. So that was good work to get us closer. So my heart tells me that the hospital is certainly worthy and it's valuable and it's important. And my heart tells me I would love to see more facade improvements. my head tells me we can't, it's zero allocated so far. We haven't put it in the budget. So my heart also tells me I'd love to hold the line at 1.1, but my head tells me, how do you do everything that we want to do, hospital donation, without looking at an increase in that area? It's just not possible to give the hospital $175,000 to invest in the CIP and not to look at a modest rate increase to that CPI of 1.1, which I don't know what it would be averaged out over the year. It might be closer to 2. But that's where my head is telling me, and that's where I think we have to consider generating some revenue here, as well as the cost cutting that staff have already put in the budget of $135,000. So to get what we want, we're going to have to increase the rate, or I'm suggesting we might have to, and perhaps borrow. I'd like to see the town hall. It's one thing to suggest that staff they've been putting up with it long enough, so another year or two won't matter. We're the employer, and we have an obligation, I think, under lots of code to make sure that the workplace is a safe environment to work in. And that includes air circulation in the time of COVID. So knowing that we've got an old, outdated air handling system and an inefficient building and employees working in those conditions, and not to put every effort into correcting that as soon as possible, I think would be a dereliction of my duty. So I'm suggesting that we find a way to do that as well. So some modest increase of up to 2% in the rate. Then hospital or the town hall proposal redevelopment, get moving ahead on it. I'm inclined to wait for the review of the CIP to see what that actually tells us before we commit money to it. And then depending on what's left, I would like to give the hospital as much as we can of the 174, but I would look to see what is actually available and then determine what that amount should be. That's all for now. Thank you.
Okay. I am making notes on this, so. Okay, so Treasurer Quazile.
So just to give you some idea of where we land, if the hospital were to be included at the 174 and to top the CIP up to, we have 15, top it up to what the 2020 status quo of 45, so be another 30,000. So option 2 of the capital, we were at a shortfall of 224. So now you're at a shortfall of about 138,000. So you could either do an increase to subsidize that shortfall, or you could increase the borrowing, which we're proposing at 171. You could add the 139 to that for borrowing. So those are kind of some scenarios that could proceed with what you're proposing this evening.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Janet, for this really well laid out presentation and report tonight. In Smith Falls, we have an MPAC problem. I think everybody knows about it. We've got a huge range in the tax assessments in town based on the neighborhood you live in, based on when your house was built, based on what real estate was like in your neighborhood during the slow years after Hershey's left. And not only is the MPAC problem residential, but it's also industrial. We're not bringing in the tax revenue on our industrial properties that we need to, and that would be comparable to other communities. So I think as a town, we really need to double down on MPAC because it's creating serious problems when we come to have these conversations. And the problem is that we've got houses that are worth the same amount of money if they went up on the real estate market, but they're paying widely different taxes. So 1.1% increase on a house that's assessed at $225,000, which is the average assessment in Perth, is a significant amount of money. They're paying $5,000 to $6,000. The average in town is in the $3,000 mark at 160,000 assessment, but there's very few houses actually assessed at 163,000. So it's easy for us to make these high level decisions based on averages and based on the big numbers, but we really need to think about how it's going to affect the residents and their lives and their bills, especially during COVID. So I think that not adjusting the budget, like the GOSA councils passed that didn't adjust the budget for the cost of inflation, was our ticket into the infrastructure deficit that we're facing now. But grants are going to be our ticket out of it. When we look at the long-term financial plan, we're never meeting the goals of raising taxes by the 7-8% that it's told us to. And we can't expect that we can keep doing that and get out of this. So we really are going to need grants to supplement our income to rebuild our infrastructure. And I think that leading into option one, I do support option one. The last phase of the town hall renovations, personally, I've seen a lot of design flaws. I think rushing that project would be a huge mistake. I would love to really get a chance to dig into the design this time, and I think slowing that project down is the right decision. There's nothing saying that we can't get it done in 2022. And the way the federal and provincial governments are talking, the vaccine's coming out, stimulus funding is on the horizon. Who knows that we can't get another $100 or $200 or $300,000 for this project next year. So strongly support option one. As for the CIP budget, I really want council to look back on the projects we've funded. And I disagree with Councillor Dwyer that funding the cover-up projects, funding the questionable designs, funding all of these questionable projects is what has depleted that budget. And if we had been a little more scrutinizing on what kind of projects we funded, we would have solid funds in that account right now. I would like to take a look at that and see, maybe we funded at 35,000, top it up to 50, because there seems to be a consensus to fund the CIP program. But I'd really like to see if it could come out of the economic development and tourism operational budget, because that's just under $600,000. I think that there's a lot of money at play there, and I don't know, maybe there's a way that we can adjust the priorities to cover that out of operational funds. Thirdly, I support the hospital ask. I think it's the year to do it, but we've got two great options here from the treasurer. And I think if we were to review option two and pick and choose, we could fully fund the hospital ask based on deferrals, and we might even be able to save more money by looking at the operational budgets, which further could supplement our transfer to capital reserves, because I am concerned that we're not making those investments in transfers to capital reserves that we need to fund future projects like the water tower and the all of the stuff that's coming down the pipe. So, and lastly, I fully support the doing a public consultation on the 21st of the 4th. So those are my first round of comments. Thank you again, Janet.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Brennan is the last word on the first round.
First round. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've had my answers ready for a while, but of course, I think the 1.1 is reasonable. I don't think I can support anything more than that. I've got people calling me when we did our first draft, and it was indicated that we were in the hole by $900,000 on capital. That would equate to a 7-point-something increase. That alarmed a lot of people. I got phone calls. Of course, that's not going to happen. So people are stressed. I mean, we're still in a pandemic, and in my view, we got to roll our sleeves up here and do something. We've done some great things capital-wise. Last year was a huge year, and this year's no different. And I think staff's suggestion, it's an easy thing to do. My question about the town hall renovations is, putting a lift in is in. Is the could the application for funding just be for the lift?
I think the only person who could answer that is CEO Marks.
I'm looking at him.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the genesis of the funding program is COVID response, and so a large part of of phase 3 is about providing more and accessible space, especially upstairs in this building. So we feel there's a fit, but we're in the position where we have to design the entirety of phase 3 to be able to design the lift. The fact is, only the design related to the lift would be eligible for funding, and we believe the cost of the lift. So our objective is to find at least 175,000, because it's 100% funded in costs, and we believe we can do that between the design of the lift and installation of a lift.
So that, through the chair, so that funding is still available. If we defer, that funding will still be available to us.
We believe so.
Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So there you go. I mean, that's we're still going to take advantage of that. I mean, 175,000 on a $1 million+ project is a drop in the bucket. So that's a good start there. In terms of the hospital, of course, I support the donation of the hospital. I agree with the mayor that if we do anything less, it's going to create a domino effect with our neighbors, and we don't want that. We want to be the leader, which we are, and there's no doubt that when the hospital was redeveloped, we stepped up to the plate in a huge way, and we all know that healthcare funding is not our responsibility. However, the health of our community is our responsibility. So that's got to be a priority, and I think. I've always said that we should be able to do that within our means. And I believe we can, and especially with the work that staff has done and getting us where we are. I think we're on the edge of getting there. So I support the hospital donation. And on the CIP, I think that's an important piece. And I would point to, I've never been a big fan at the start of the CIP, but when I see that it encourages people to invest in their own properties, and that's a little bump up, I think that's value for money. And so I support that. I guess that's it for round one for me. I think that we can find a way to do it. We've got some big plans this year. Lombard Street, that's another one that, that's a big ticket item, and we've got lots of big ticket items coming up. So I think we need to roll up our sleeves here and get down to business.
Well, I think all our sleeves are rolled up. Feeling that from everybody. We've had one go around, everybody has stated their position. If we were going to vote on this right now, I don't know that that's the will of council, but maybe I could just revisit what everyone has said so far. Would that be helpful? Mm-hmm. Okay. So it looks like Councillor Allen, the mayor, Councillor Brennan, Councillor Dwyer, that would say yes to the hospital foundation. I mean, you've got 4, then you're in agreement on that. There were only 2 dissenting, not completely dissenting, but wondering whether we could. So we could say that the hospital foundation would go ahead, or the money for the hospital would go ahead. If I look at, pick another easy one, the CIP, Councillor Allen wants it to stay. Councillor Dwyer wants it to stay. Councillor Brennan wants it to stay. And even Councillor McGuire wants it to stay, but perhaps coming out of a different budget. And Councillor and Mayor Panko wants it to stay. So again, we have, yes, Councillor Dwyer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's a valuable point that Councillor McGuire raises, because if, sorry, I've got multiple screens going. There we go. If Janet could give us some indication of whether or not that money could simply come out of the operating budget for economic development, then I think that more or less answers your question. It can kind of be included there. Will, I guess, ECDEV will reallocate, and then we don't really have to have the conversation now.
Well, without putting ECDEV on the firing line, CAO, do you have any thoughts on that, or Treasurer Quazile, do you have any thoughts on handling it that way? That's two councillors now who have thought that that could come out of ECDEV as opposed to being added to the current budget. Could come out of an existing budget at the ECDEV.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I would answer that question by saying staff went back between drafts and found 135,000. So my statement would be to find significantly more will require us a cut in service. As was mentioned, we've not added staff. It's a status quo budget from an operating point of view. So if that were the direction, we would need to look at ways of adjusting service levels.
Okay, so that being said, I do see consensus on CIP proceeding. We'll start there. I am not personally a fan of going back through operational budgets. I'm more a fan of telling senior staff how much they need to save and letting them figure out where they do that. They have come back with 135,000 in the second draft. So I'm not predisposed or I'm not disposed to going into an operational budget as Councillor McGuire and Councillor Dwyer have suggested, but I'd like to hear from the others. We have consensus to go ahead with CIP. We do not have consensus, it appears, as to where that should be paid from. CEO Morris.
So my suggestion in this regard is that if we answer the 5 questions, and it sounds like we've answered the CIP question, then we will bring that back in a third draft and recommend how we fund it.
Okay, I think the concerns have been heard then on that, and so we can say that there is consensus to have CIP in that program continue. Is that correct, Council? Give me a little nod. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so that's the hospital and the CIP. I think virtual meeting, we were all in agreement with that. We're fine with that. Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, absolutely. I would suggest, though, the virtual meeting be held after Christmas. People are busy getting ready, and January 4th, I think, would be a good time to do it. And,
is everyone open to that? Okay. Yeah, we're all going to have a better Christmas because we won't have to talk about this until January 4th.
Exactly.
Okay, Councillor or Treasurer Quazile.
Just bear in mind, the final draft is to be presented on January 11th. So to do something on the 4th doesn't give a whole lot of turnaround to make any significant changes if feedback were substantial from the public.
That's a good point. Is there a drop dead date? Could we push everything back by a week to allow for that? It's
with council's direction. I mean, the policy dictates we have it done by the end of January, but certainly if you wish to waiver from that, that's your call.
I don't want to put any more pressure on staff to like a week. A week is not mostly a reasonable timeline to get some of this stuff done. Mayor Panko, you had a thought?
Well, I agree with Councillor Brennan. The 4th is probably more appropriate. And if it turned out, I guess, that there was significant concern for certain areas, which I wouldn't expect, and we had to move from the 11th back, I think we could make that decision. The CEO could make that decision that week if it was approaching and there was just no way you were going to be able to modify or to come back with something that is based on outpouring of public feedback.
So that's a game day decision by the CAO when we get there. Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Allen and Mayor Panko attested we've done budgets far later than January in the past. So this is warp speed.
My
Right?
Yes.
previous service at the council, we got them done by June. So this is warp speed. So, but that makes us appreciate our treasurer all that more when we
Yes.
think about that. Okay, so we've got that done. So now we still have, let me see, we're still going to discuss the complex renos, but I want to see if there's any other places where we are in agreement or that we have consensus. CIP stays, hospital stays, virtual meetings, fine. So I think we are down to two things. CIP, or sorry, COLA, what's the other?
CPI.
Yeah, CPI, there. Yes, the Consumer Price Index, the treasurer has gone with 1.1. We have, Lorraine is open to more than 1.1. I am open to more than 1.1. The mayor is open to more than 1.1. Mr. McKenna is open to more than 1.1. Councillors McGuire, Brennan, and Dwyer want to stay with the 1.1. So there is a consensus to be higher than 1.1. We don't know how much higher, but there is consensus to look at that. So do we want to discuss? Mayor Panko and then Councillor McGuire.
Well, perhaps, I mean, there's consensus to move beyond that. There's no consensus on what that number could be or should be. I wonder if at this stage, if we're comfortable, staff accommodating all of the comments and feedback and direction tonight, recalibrating based on the latest findings, also understanding the variable of the contribution to the county and how that may or may not require a bump on the tax rate, or another bump on the tax rate. Because if that comes back and they're willing to spread that over a period of time, any discussion might be on tax rate change might be mute.
Is everybody agreeable to that, having staff recalibrate? Yes? Okay, it looks like we have consensus that the consensus is that we're open to having it be more than 1.1, and we will look for the treasurer's direction on that in the next iteration of this budget. Correct? Thank you. Okay, so now we're down to, I think we're down to just the last thing, which is the town hall complex. So if I can restate here, Councillor Brennan wishes to defer. Councillor McGuire wishes to defer. Councillor Dwyer wishes to defer. Councillor Allen is open to borrowing. Councillor McKenna is open to borrowing. And I'm saying open, I'm just saying that was what they expressed when they were speaking. And Mayor Panko is not opposed to borrowing, and I have clearly stated that I'm not opposed to, in fact, I'm in favor of borrowing to complete it. So that would say that 4 of the 7 are not opposed to borrowing to complete the town hall renovations in 2021, I'm assuming. And again, do we wish to discuss that in greater depth? Mayor Panko.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from CA Morris or Director Manhire, I guess, on the timelines for construction, sort of timelines for detailed design, how, I guess, as CEO Morris indicated, a lift would have to be part of a broader design. And I guess what deadline is in place for the federal funding as to when that has to be consumed by. I'm anticipating this is a project which likely would overlap a couple of years. So if there was whatever borrowing, it may be something that could be fluid from the standpoint that maybe some expenditures in 2021, there may also be a bulk of it in 2022, but if we started getting work going ahead on this in the near future.
Yes, Sam Morris.
So perhaps I'll start and then turn it over to Art. So to be clear, to access the ISIP funding, it goes through the provincial approvals, then it's nominated to the feds. And the indication they've given us is they would approve it in the spring of 2021. Our fear is that could be June 20th. If it were March 22nd, we'd have a pretty good chance of getting this done. But before we can't incur costs before the federal government approves it. So that means we can't design it, we can't tender it, and of course we can't award it. So our concern isn't whether we can get the full project done, it's whether we can get enough done that fits the funding criteria to secure the 175. So if it were council's direction to proceed with the project, then we would go through that process and hive off what we think would apply for the fund that would make us eligible for the funding. So it would the project will span 2 calendar years. It would start at some point in 2021 and finish at some point in 2022. But I just want to emphasize the 175 is only available if we build what's eligible. The subject of our application has to be built by December 31st of next year. That doesn't mean the whole project has to be built by December 31st of next year. So it will span multiple years. We'll just need to craft the application to fit the direction that council gives us.
Councillor McGuire first and then Mayor Panko.
Thanks, Madam Chair. CEO Morris, can you just confirm if the lift and the design work counts towards the grant? Because I thought it did, but now I'm getting confused.
We believe it will.
Okay.
Mayor Panko?
Treasurer Lucille, maybe first.
I just wanted to reiterate, I realize that council doesn't want to stop the wheels turning for this project. In all fairness, the design is probably going to take us a good part of the year. So you're not probably going to see a whole lot of construction prior to 2022. And even if we were to get the design in place and start construction in the fall, you always have the option of doing a pre-approval for the 2022 budget. So that's just something to put in a thought as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Brennan and then Mayor Panko.
Yeah, I thought I asked this earlier. We can defer the project, the construction of the project, and still apply for the 175 for the design work on the lift and access that money and still defer the 900,000. Am I correct?
CEO Morris.
Only if we build the lift. We have to show something tactile to get the funding.
So the lift would be built. That would mean the design of the entire project would have to be done. Correct?
Correct.
But we could still build the lift by, what would you say, December 30th or whatever?
Correct. Yes.
So is that doable?
We believe it is, yes.
Okay. That doesn't change.
So sorry, I just want to make sure. So you're proposing, Councillor Brennan, to move forward with deferring the whole project and just doing design and building of the lift?
That's correct. And then do the rest of next year. That's correct.
CEO Morris?
I think it's worth noting that breaking a project up is going to cost more money, right? There's deployment costs for the whole project, and there's still deployment costs to build one element of it, the lift. So in the bigger picture, it makes sense to do the whole project as opposed to deploying twice. But we don't have to do it all in 2021 if if council funded the project. We'd have the money there, we'd get started on it, but it's going to carry on into 2022 for sure. So I just want to, breaking the project up, you know, we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're paying a premium to do it in 2 chunks, only to secure 175,000. It would be better to do the whole thing, apply for the elements that we think we can get done, and proceed on that basis. Now, you know, we will apply and we can consult with the funders to find out exactly if this is going to fit the criteria, but at this point we believe it does. Art,
Thank you,
anything to add?
Councillor McGuire.
You passed.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Dr. Seal Morris. I think so. How I want to make sure I understand option 1 properly. Option 1 is that we separate out the cost of building the lift and all of the design work for phase 3, and we put that into the budget for this year. The majority of that cost is going to be covered by a grant that we're pretty sure we're eligible for. So by deferring the 900 and whatever it is, 974,000, it's more of an accounting exercise than anything, because there's nothing that stops us from doing pre-budget approval next year around this time, next fall. And that will ensure continuity of the project, and it will ensure that we don't miss out or we incur any extra costs by splitting things up. So I'm fully in support of that. I think it gives us the most options, and it frees up a lot of space in our budget discussions. Unless I'm incorrect, Janet.
C.O. Morris, is that, I just want to make sure, is Councillor McGuire and Councillor Brennan's take on this, will we only be able, we won't be able to submit the cost of design for anything more than the lift though, will we?
Correct.
Right.
Because
So-
we will not have a chance to complete the full project by December 31st. That's an impossibility.
So the, and the design for the entire project is not eligible for funding.
Correct.
Okay, so we are going to be spending some money if we proceed with the full design that's coming out of town coffers.
Correct.
Yes, and the budget, Janet can confirm, the budget I think is 275 for this project with an
That's correct.
offsetting amount of 175, which is
If we are successful getting the 175.
correct.
Okay. Mayor Panko?
Yeah, so my thinking was along the lines of Councilor McGuire. So we move ahead with the detailed design for phase 3. The funding comes in for the lift. We complete the lift in 2021 to take advantage of that funding. But we can also, based on when we have the detailed design complete, when we're going to go to tender, I would assume we could proceed with the entire project with a focus on completing the lift, understanding that we may need pre-budget approval for the entire project, or maybe take money from reserves we needed to cover part of the cost, or if we're intending to borrow it anyway, the bulk of the cost, we could simply self-finance until the project is completed and finance the whole project in 2022. The key thing, I guess, is we know that we need to get this project completed in the next year and a half or so, and but we need to make sure we capitalize on 175,000, and we need to make sure we get a lift in place. So I think that's a fair compromise.
Okay, so Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I think we're on to something. I think some solution is emerging out of this. I guess my question is, have we actually, none of us are engineers or architects that I'm aware of. Can this actually be done? Did we check with a builder, designer, engineer to say, can you actually put an elevator up first or a lift and then go on with your other project? So practically, has this been just vetted?
Director Manhart, can you answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. We have consulted with the architects that have done the design for Town Hall, just to see what the options are. And as CAO Morris indicated, this is a very aggressive and tight timeline. If we don't get approval until June and we can't hire We have to have a design. We have to have that design, then develop the criteria for this. We have to have the engineering done. We have to put that out to tender. It has to be awarded and built before the end of December in order to take advantage of these funds. So yes, we can continue with the design for the full phase 3. And again, to clarify, 25% of the cost of the project can be design elements. So it would only be 25% eligible, and the rest would have to be covered by the town. Again, presuming that we kind of go ahead, have it ready to issue for a tender once we have the funding in place. So we have confirmed it's a very, very aggressive timeline, but they're saying if we hit all the green lights, we should be able to go.
Councilor McKenna.
So it's cost effective to put the elevator in first. That was what I was asking. I understand it's a complicated, but can we actually do what we're suggesting? I didn't hear that answered.
We can do it. It is not necessarily cost effective, as again was indicated earlier, that when you break up a project, there's some cost efficiencies that you lose. And I know earlier it was indicated about construction costs going, being high in the housing conversation. They were indicating 40% for materials. We're looking at 35 to 40% increase during COVID. Now, having said that, the next phase of lumber bidding as companies buy lumber in futures comes up, and they do anticipate that price would go down. So pushing the project ahead might actually put us in a position where we're buying high. So there are options. We can, if we're successful with the grant, we can get the design done and the lift put in, and then add to the other. But there is we do lose some cost effectiveness in breaking out the project.
Councilor McGuire, I'll let McKenna finish his thought, and then I'll go to McGuire.
But we're talking about one project now. We aren't talking about, it's a project's going to take us 2 years to complete. It's still one project, right?
We're just doing it, the first in a piecemeal fashion.
Because we would have had to do that anyways. We couldn't get it all done in 1 year anyway. All right, thank you.
Councilor McGuire.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Is there an opportunity when we get the detailed design work done, and as Councilor McKenna is saying, we've got one project, can we make the choice to do the pre-budget approval for the entire phase 3 if it seems cost effective to do it that way come, I don't know, August or whenever the design work would be done, really saving any potential for having extra costs incurred by doing the lift first? Like we could do the lift first, but as part of a broader renovation, and it all gets done in 2022.
Through the chair, we could do that. I would anticipate the design and consultation and development of the plans to the point where they're tender ready would take us probably 6 months. Depending on feedback from people and what the desire is. So that would give us some time to do that. There would have to be a number of balls in the air at the same time to make sure that that could happen and still to take advantage of the funding that's available where the project needs to be completed by the end of December next year, 2021.
Councilor Brennan.
Yeah, I think we're beating a dead horse. What I support on item 4 is staff's recommendation, which is to proceed with the design element funded by capital reserves, which would then inform the placement and installation of the lift funded by the ISIP funding for $175,000. The balance of construction for phase 3 would then tentatively be scheduled for 2022. That's what I support.
Thank you. I don't think we're beating a dead horse. As long as other councillors have questions, I'm prepared to hear them. Councillor McGuire?
I just agree with, I support staff's recommendation too.
Okay. Councillor Allen?
I do too.
Okay.
I agree.
Then, and Councillor Dwyer, then I think we have consensus to proceed with staff's recommendation. I would just one thought is we're going to do that lift ahead of time. I would not, because not in other projects that are unrelated to the town, to find out after we have done that, that we had to change it. So I'm happy to pay for the design ahead of time to make sure that that is never an option, that we have to change something of that magnitude once it's built. Okay, so we have consensus for that. Well, good, well done. I think we got it all. Councilor McGuire.
Do we have any interest giving staff direction on option 2 or going through it as a group? Because I think there's a lot of great work that's been put into it, and it might be a shame to just pass over it because we're doing so well.
Hang on, I'm flipping to option 2. And I've lost my screen. Oh. No, still don't have it. Hang on.
For reference, it's Schedule 4, the last page of the document.
Okay, I'm just, my laptop is retrieving it. I think I pressed the enter button too many times and now it's confused. So, Treasurer Kozil, could you just recap, well, this is bringing it up, not to hold dead air here, but could you just recap option 2 for us, please?
As indicated, staff went through and found some potential deferrals for council's consideration and some decreases as well. The fire department, the tanker truck, originally 350,000, 3/4 ton truck in the fire department at 40,000. In Parks and Rec, a shelter for dogs at 30,000. 3/4 ton trucks, there was 2, defer one of those, so a decrease of 35,000. Expand the urban forest, originally it was 37.4, we've decreased that for a savings of 17,000. Deferral of the automatic timers at 95,000. Lower Reach Park enhancement, that was a carryover project of 16,000. So those carryover reserves could be potentially used for another project. And the same with the parks building and storage. The HVAC in the fire dispatch, a quote come in that reduced that from 17,000 to 10. The fob system in the community center, deferral of 50,000. The transportation master plan, originally at 125,000, deferral, and the potentially that could be funded by DC. So they thought that was a good deferral to take place. And the IT department upgrade battery backup was 35, reduced to 5. And I believe that's it.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor McGuire, do you want to, again, I'm seeing part of the, on the screen. What particularly did you want to highlight there?
I wouldn't mind going through it and, you know, seeing what we agree with, what we don't agree with, what needs to get done, what can get put off. Because there's significant opportunity here, but I don't know what my colleagues think.
Okay. Well, again, I applaud staff for deciding which they want to defer or how they want to lessen it. So I don't know what do the other colleagues on council, do you want to go through this line by line, or how are you? How do
Madam
you want to
Chair?
approach this? Yep, I can't see anybody, so. you'll
Okay,
have-
okay. Thank you. If we go back, I think we've got,
There,
we've gained consensus on all points, on all items to this point. And
Yeah.
there's still a variable of not knowing what our contribution will be to the county. And I think we've got consensus on a tax rate change of somewhere between 1.1 and maybe 2%, somewhere in there. So, I mean, deferral of these items leaves us with a bigger challenge next year, along with all the new items that are going to be added to next year's that are probably already in our asset management plan. So I'm reluctant to defer items if we can do them this year within the scope of what we've sort of already agreed to. So at this stage, I think it's probably fair to turn it back to staff, wait for till they hear from the county, and then see how these items fit within the parameters of what we have already provided, and then come back to us with a third draft to indicate that here's the picture. You know, it works with keeping these, or it's not going to work, and we're going to have to make some changes within the scope of what's here in option 2, schedule 4.
Treasurer Kozil is desperate to tell us something.
Yes, I just want to kind of rein in from my interpretation of what's been taking place. So what was presented this evening, we're going to add in the Smith Falls Hospital donation, 174,000. CIP, I'm guessing the 30,000 to bring that up to the status quo, same as 2020. So with that, revises your transfer to capital reserve to 1.182. We only require 1.125 for option 1 capital. So you basically are balancing with about $56,000 to spare. There doesn't need to be an additional tax rate increase. Nothing else is hinging to the county. I mean, that would be great if that happens, but option 1 capital is where you're going to balance basically this evening with what's in place right now, the 1.1 rate increase.
Councilor McGuire.
And so that's great news. And so anything that would come off of option 2, we could transfer to capital reserves and make up that shortfall.
Again, that's council. If council chooses to do that, I would like to just interject, of all the capital reserves, the projected balances I try to balance to the long-term financial plan. The one reserve that is not in line with that is the wastewater. So that if anywhere, you could potentially increase that transfer from operational to capital. So that's just food for thought.
Okay, so that is good news. And Councilor McGuire, does that address your misgivings about going through those deferrals again, or at least for this point in time?
Yeah, my only one that, and Chief Cheeseborough, you might have something to add on this. We've got almost $400,000 in fire trucks that could be deferred. And my understanding about the tanker truck, there was some discussion about it last time, and I'd just be interested to get an update on those 2 line items if possible.
Through the chair, when we looked at the price of the replacement for the tanker, as with the pumper, we just divided that in half. Since that time of the proposal for the first draft, the cabin chassis is at $129,000. So it wouldn't be the 350 for this year, so it'd be the 129 plus the tax. And again, split over 2 years, the remainder would be in 2022. So with regards to the effect of not replacing the tanker, that would affect only the residential commercial insurance for the 2 contracted areas that we have. As the vehicle is over the 20-year maximum requirement by the fire underwriters, then that vehicle is then considered uncertifiable by their standards, and they are the governing body that reports to the insurance company on municipal gradings.
Does that answer your question, Councilor McGuire?
Yeah, and just do we see cost recovery on those agreements? Like is this kind of factored in when we renew the next agreement that, you know, this is going to be paid for by the income from that over the next 20 years or its lifespan?
Through the chair, well, what we're receiving right now for income from those two municipalities is approximately $80,000 per year for the automatic aid responses, 10,000 to Drummond North Elmsley and 69,000 and change to Rideau Lakes. Now, on top of that charge, we also submit invoicing for motor vehicle accidents in both those areas. But we certainly can't predict what that income is going to be. But that also is received by on top of the responses that we're charging for now.
Councilor McKenna?
So as I said, it looks like we're emerging on something that's agreement. So if I could just ask a question not related, but it's related to the budget. Could the Police Services Board representatives tell me if the Police Services budget has been approved by the board? It has been approved. And is it going up 2.5%? Is that the cost increase? That's what I'm looking at in the budget.
Mayor Panko?
Yeah, yeah, whatever. I don't have it in front of me, but that's whatever.
There's Chief McGilvery is available.
Okay.
I forgot he was there till he turned his camera on.
All the better.
It is a through the chair. It is a 2.5% increase currently that has been approved by the board.
Councilor McKenna.
Thanks, Chief. I just, did the Police Services Board give direction to you or the department, or did the board consider staying under inflation? Were those efforts underway? Or was it, I know that we don't get to really, it's not our job to get into your budget, but I just wondered what the parameters were. If you're at 2.5% increase and we're trying to go at 1.1, it just seems to be a contradiction in our, I guess, our overall efforts to work on this.
Yes, Councilor McKenna, through the chair, the budget has been reviewed both operationally and the capital as well with the Police Service Board, and as has been noted over the last several years, the budget has been well under even the 1.1. Our average, I believe, over the last 6 years has been about 0.75% for an increase. Unfortunately, this year there are some staffing and salary areas that have put the operational up somewhat. Capital has decreased substantially from last year.
Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions? Treasurer Kozil, did you have or is that just your hand? Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay, so your questions have been answered then, Councilor McGuire? Yes? Okay. And Councilor McKenna, any other questions with regard to the budget at this point in time? I just have one with regard to operations. It struck me a little bit, and that's on Schedule 3, Treasurer Kozil, the vacancy rebate. Do we still need that? I remember when it was introduced, but given our economic boom and our hope for redevelopment on some of these properties, do we still need a vacancy rebate? Yes.
It has been declining, and that's why we felt confident that we could reduce it another additional 10. The policy still is in place from 2018. They're maxed out at a 3-year that they can get a rebate. Certainly council can make that decision to disregard or discontinue with this program, but for now, we felt that that was, by decreasing it by that 10,000 was a good thing. It wasn't, we didn't think it was going to be that much of a risk.
Okay. Councillor McGuire?
Yeah, I would support cutting the vacancy rebate. I think it had a time and a place, but it just doesn't suit the economic environment we're in right now.
Well, again, that would be a policy decision, I guess, is that right, by council, and we would have to discuss that at a committee of the whole, and which we can put on a future, and if that were the case, and if we were to abandon the vacancy rebate, then we would just see an overage in the budget. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we don't need to address it in the budget per se, but we may wish to discuss that at a future committee of the whole. I would like to hear why we still have it, or what the justifications might be for that. That was my only question with regard to that. Are there any other questions or any other, CEO Morris, Councillor McGuire?
Can we just confirm there's consensus for that so that we can make it an action item for a future meeting? I wasn't sure what the rest of council thinks.
Is everyone in favor of discussing whether we continue with a vacancy rebate? Fine, then we could ask our Mrs. Bennett to put that on a future cow, please.
Yep, no problem.
I knew you'd be there somewhere, Nadine. I can't see you. Okay, if we are satisfied that we have given, and have we given you, Treasurer Koziel and CEO Mars, all the direction you require tonight to bring us back something else?
So can I recap?
Yes, please.
So inclusion of the Smith Falls Hospital donation and CIP, transfer the 15 from reserve, top it up another 30, and going with option 1 of the capital scenarios that were provided, and leaving in the CIP increases of 1.1. So as indicated, there should be no additional increases required for tax or water or wastewater, and no additional borrowing other than that was denoted on the first draft.
That's what, the results of all that you'll be bringing back to us to look at again.
Yes.
Yeah.
So from what has been discussed tonight, you're going to basically balance. There'll be an additional, as I indicated, 56,000. We can certainly, as I had indicated, maybe the wastewater transfer to capital, we could top that up.
So when we resume on January, when we resume these discussions on January 4th, you will have all that for us. And you potentially could have some more information to add to that as well with regard to county.
We could, if they entertain our proposal, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And Councillor McGuire again?
Sorry, one last thing. Would it be possible to get the report for January 1st before the holidays, just so that we, you know what I mean, we've got a good amount of time to look over it and discuss it and whatnot? So
Councillor McGuire is asking, we get these things because the staff is, putting it all together for council. But especially with something this that lasts all year, if we could get some copies of it prior to seeing it on the agenda, so that we have a few days with it, if that's possible. It looks like staff shaking their head yes. CEO Morris?
Yeah, I would just remind committee that this isn't scheduled to come back until the 11th, right? That's the third draft on the 11th. But I think what we could do is to summarize the direction you've given us, so you know where we are. It's a lot of work to change all of these documents, but we can do a summarization of what you've given us direction on tonight and provide that.
And what that looks like on the budget.
Exactly.
Okay. So just something down and dirty for us to work with. We don't want to put you to a whole lot of work, but it does help. And I'm one of the ones who would appreciate a hard copy of it. Okay, so it looks like we nailed this. Good job, everybody. And it's 6:14. So let me finish the business of the committee. So we have no in-camera issues, and I will hear a motion to adjourn COW. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Allen. All those in favor? Thank you. We're going to take a short break, 5 minutes, and then we will resume with council. Thanks very much for
Yeah. Good evening. Welcome back to the special meeting of Smith Falls Town Council from Monday, December 14th. I only have one announcement tonight, and it's one that saddens all of us and of course the entire community. And I support that we lost a legend last week.
Can't see it.
Thomas Allen Folks, Tom Folks passed away December 10th. And Tom was a man who obviously led by example, led by his values, who deeply believed that success in life is intertwined and completely committed to community. The two would go hand in hand. And his devotion to his community was certainly second to none. And I know I speak on behalf of all of council here, and I'll give everyone a moment if you want to say anything further. But Tom made all of us strive to want to be better, to want to do more for our community, and to commit to improving the quality of life for everyone in our town. And he lived by those words, and he led by example, as I mentioned. Long-standing devoted member of the library board, key driver behind the development of our beautiful station theater, also responsible for the addition of the rubberized surface of the walking track around our Memorial Community Center. And I recall him coming to council, committee of the whole back when that was 2011, 2012, somewhere in there, and saying this, we need to do this. The council needs to do this. He put some money up to make sure we would do it, recognizing that it was going to be much more forgiving for people with hip and knee issues. And when we're getting 40,000 people around that, trips around that every year, we know a lot of it's because Tom made a suggestion and really encouraged council to follow through and make that something that would be accommodating for everybody. He translated his financial success in life into a legacy of philanthropy. And a lot of it focused on Smith Falls, but as we are all aware, it spilled over into other parts of the country, including the Heart Institute in Ottawa, and I think his alma mater in New Brunswick. And his involvement with local organizations was vast, from Real to involvement with Trinity United Church and so many others that he's just, as I said, he would set his mind to doing something. He would lead by example, and he helped shape the community that we all enjoy today. We take great comfort that he's reunited with Pat, and anybody who had any conversation with Tom, it wasn't long before the conversation turned to Pat, and he always wanted to make sure that she was remembered, and I think we take solace and comfort knowing that the two are reunited. And Tom is survived by his daughter Donna, her husband Jim, daughter Melanie, and son-in-law John Otway of Peterborough, son Matthew, and spouse Nympha of Nicaragua, and his grandchildren Jack, Mark, Nate, Sam, and Benjamin, and survived by his late brother David and his wife Ottawa. So people may have noticed the flags at Town Hall were lowered today. They were lowered in recognition of Tom. So rest in peace, my friend. You will not be forgotten. At that, I'll ask if anyone else would have anything further they'd like to share. Yes, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, of course I would. Tom is a good friend of mine, and everything you say is so true. Tom has his fingerprint all over this town, and he was a great member of the Rotary Club. And one thing I'd mention is because of Tom, the last 3 years, every grade 3 student in Smith Falls has been a recipient of a picture dictionary, which he instigated and we delivered, and that is still true this year, although it was delivered contactless. But the other thing about Tom, that he's had some health issues, as we know, in the past few years, whether it be his heart or he had a knee replacement last year, and I'll tell you that he had the stick-to-itiveness to keep going, and he was just a great friend, very pugnacious, and a great debater. We had great debates, but I'm going to miss him. Every time the phone rings, I think it's Tom, but it's not. But great. I really appreciate the flags going down, and I know his family's going to appreciate it as well.
Thank you. So moving on into our agenda, I'll ask for disclosure of monetary interest. I hear none. No delegations, no adoption of minutes. I assume no reports, or anybody have any report? No. No bylaws. We have a couple motions. First one is with Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you. Moved by me, myself, and seconded by Councillor Alford, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls formally adopts the housing report and recommendations contained as prepared by the Housing Task Force. And further, that the Council directs staff to undertake the recommended actions contained in the housing report that will help Smith Falls and its housing partners address housing gaps in Smith Falls.
Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, this is a report we received this evening, an exhaustive report. A whole bunch of work went into it, and I think that it's a great blueprint for us going forward. And I think the next motion that we're going to have is going to speak to that. And so we have this as a top strategic priority, and this is following through on that. And there's a lot more work to do, but this is the groundwork.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? It's moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Alford, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls formally adopts a housing report and the recommendations contained as prepared by the Housing Task Force. And further, the Council directs staff to undertake the recommended actions contained within the housing report that will help the town and its housing partners to address housing gaps in Smith Falls. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 8.2, Councillor McGuire, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dwyer, whereas the Government of Canada created a national housing strategy, a 55+ billion 10-year plan to strengthen the middle class, cut chronic homelessness in half, fuel our economy, and give more Canadians across the country a place to call home. And whereas the Government of Canada, through the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, launched the Rapid Housing Initiative, a $1 billion program to help address urgent housing needs of vulnerable Canadians, especially in the context of COVID-19, through the rapid housing construction of affordable housing. And whereas it is recognized that a growing housing affordability crisis exists in Lanark County and the Town of Smith Falls. And whereas the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls has adopted a housing report that recommends the Council support and prioritize the development of partnerships with not-for-profit organizations in recognition of their role in creating affordable housing supply within the town. And whereas CareBridge Community Support has assembled a team to plan, design, and build a 28-unit affordable housing project at 44 Chambers Street in the Town of Smith Falls, and intends to submit a funding application to the Rapid Housing Initiative program. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls supports an application from CareBridge Community Support to the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation for the Rapid Housing Initiative to provide funding for an affordable housing project at 44 Chambers Street in the Town of Smith Falls. And further, that Council will support CareBridge by facilitating access to eligible municipal funding programs, particularly the Community Improvement Plan, with potential to provide financial relief for planning fees, building permit fees, and tax abatement, with the objective of keeping housing rental rates as affordable as possible for future tenants. And further, that a copy of the newly adopted housing report prepared by Smith Falls Housing Task Force be included with this resolution, along with Council's resolution adopting the recommendations of this plan.
Thank you. Discussion, Councillor McGuire?
So this is a really exciting one. This is a game changer for Smith Falls in a lot of ways. We've got a new player in town in the form of CareBridge, a not-for-profit housing provider that really focuses on building communities where people can live and grow for a long time. We've got a key location at the corner of Chambers and Bay Street. It's centrally located to services, commercial districts, and very close to the park. We've got an unprecedented funding program in the Rapid Housing Initiative, where it's going to allow this project to be almost completely funded by federal government money and without a mortgage. So that's just going to further the long-term financial sustainability of this project. And based on the length of the resolution, I'm sure I'm missing 3 or 4 other great aspects of it, but this is something to be excited about for sure. We don't get one like this every week.
Thank you.
And thanks. Well, I guess the last one is big thanks to CareBridge, to the Housing Task Force, and Mayor Panko for this has been a long time coming and a lot of work and perseverance. And so thank you for putting that in for us.
Any further discussion? I will ask for a recorded vote. I think it adds more weight
to the resolution for CMHC. I'll read the question. Whereas the Government of Canada created a national housing strategy, a $55 billion 10-year plan to strengthen the middle class, cut chronic homelessness in half, and fuel our economy, and give more Canadians across the country a place to call home. And whereas the Government of Canada, through the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, in brackets CMHC, launched the Rapid Housing Initiative, in brackets RHI, a $1 billion program to help address urgent housing needs of vulnerable Canadians, especially in the context of COVID-19, through the rapid construction of affordable housing. And whereas it is recognized that a growing housing affordability crisis exists in Lanark County and the town of Smith Falls. And whereas the Council of the Corporation of the town of Smith Falls has adopted a housing report that recommends that council support and prioritize the development of partnerships with not-for-profit organizations in recognition of their role in creating affordable housing supply within the town. And whereas Carabridge Community Support has assembled a team to plan, design, and build a 28-unit affordable housing project at 44 Chambers Street in the town of Smith Falls, and intends to submit a funding application to the Rapid Housing Initiative program. Therefore, be resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the town of Smith Falls supports an application from Carabridge Community Support to the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation for the Rapid Housing Initiative to provide funding for an affordable housing project at 44 Chambers Street in the town of Smith Falls. And further, that council will support Carabridge by facilitating access to eligible municipal funding programs, particularly the Community Improvement Plan, with potential to provide financial relief for planning fees, building permit fees, and tax abatement, the objective of keeping housing rental rates as affordable as possible for future tenants. And further, that a copy of the newly adopted housing report prepared by the Smith Falls Housing Task Force be included with the resolution, along with council's resolution adopting the recommendations of this plan. A recorded vote has been requested.
With respect to item 8.2, Rapid Housing Initiative, please state yay or nay. Councillor Alford?
Yay.
Councillor Allen?
Yay.
Councillor Brennan?
Yay.
Councillor Dwyer?
Yay.
Councillor McGuire?
Yay.
Councillor McKenna?
Yay.
Mayor Panko?
Yay.
Carried.
Thank you. Inquiries and announcements. Councillor Allen.
Yeah, I just have one this evening. Fran Drescher was a star in the Christmas setup, and it was a film that was partially filmed at the Railway Museum of Eastern Ontario. And I just want to let people know in Smith Falls that the movie, The Christmas Setup, is on CTV this Friday, December 18th at 8 o'clock. Also on Cogeco Cable 14. So check it out.
Wonderful, thank you. And I understand another crew was back in town about a week ago filming another movie, which would be doable in the future.
Heritage House. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Councillor McKenna.
I just wanted to thank the staff for the work they did on the budget, tremendous amount of work. And I want to thank the two working outside councillors for coming in early today. I know that you're both working full time and put a lot of effort into this. So I really appreciated being able to come in. I think we're all a little fresher. I think the outcome was better thanks to your sacrifice, working more than full time and then coming in and doing this. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. And Councillor Alford, I believe you have something for us.
You're muted.
Two, Your Worship, actually. One will be quite quick, but I wanted to, we are in the midst of Hanukkah, and I wanted to wish my Jewish friends and residents of Smith Falls a happy Hanukkah. And I've been a little remiss, and I feel like I've let Councillor Brennan down a couple of times because I haven't had my trivia ready, but I took some time today. Smith Falls was incorporated in 1883. Does anyone know what year we formed our own police force?
Oh,
1883.
No, 18. 1892.
90 something.
Counselor Dwyer?
I was gonna say 1817, because I think we had, didn't one of the constables put out a book a couple years ago to celebrate the 100 years, and I'm thinking that was probably 2017.
It was 120.
Well, I can tell you, Smith Falls was incorporated in 1883, but the canal was built in 1830, but construction started in 1832. So in 1854, the village appointed constables who were citizens who discharged their duties on a part-time basis and were paid piecework for their various duties. So I guess if you arrested somebody, you got so much. If you broke up a fight, you got so much. But actually in 1881, 2 years before Smith Falls was incorporated, we appointed our first full-time chief constable, and that marks the beginning of the municipal police force in Smith Falls. And John B. Drew was the first of the town's police officers, and he was assisted by those same part-time constables. So 2 years before we were incorporated, I think there might have been some lawlessness. I remember a story about Fort Hemlock and stuff goings on. So we probably needed some police out there patrolling prior to even us becoming an incorporated town. So there, Councillor Brennan. Thank you.
And as one of the 2 members of the Police Service Board, I humbly apologize for not having that answer correct.
Well, I unfortunately, Chief McGilvery wasn't here. He might have been able to answer that.
I'm sure he would.
That is it for me, Your Worship.
Councilor Brandon, you have something else to add?
I assume there's a meeting next week, the 21st?
Yes.
Is it a committee of whole?
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's any appetite around the table to make that create a Christmas sweater meeting. If you have a Christmas sweater, we could.
Has to be ugly Christmas sweater. Right?
I got that covered.
Well, Jay has one. He's had the same ugly sweater for almost as long as I've known him.
Actually, we talked about Tom, and we had a ugly sweater thing at the Rotary. He won it. I'll share the picture with you, but he won the ugly sweater a couple years ago.
Well, due to COVID, I will be making a homemade ugly sweater.
His was too, so that's good.
It'll be super ugly.
You better get knitting. Okay.
That's it.
Councilor Dwyer, you have a motion for adjournment, please.
I do. Sorry, I have to switch devices here. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McGuire, that this council adjourn its proceedings at 6:37 and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Dwyer, seconded by Councilor McGuire. This council adjourns proceedings at 6:37 p.m. and stands so adjourned to the next duly called meeting of council. And one final suggestion as you prepare for next week's meetings, get your singing voices in order so we may share our Christmas cheer.